We have a big debate on Tuesday night, and it's going to be the second presidential debate of this cycle, but it's the first with this set of candidates. We had one before with President Biden. Now we have it with Vice President Kamala Harris filling the role as the Democratic nominee. Matt, I'll start with you. What's going to be the biggest difference between the debate that we saw in July and the one that we're going to see, or at the end of June, and the one that we're going to see tonight, or excuse me, tomorrow night?
Yeah, well, Will, I think the biggest difference is who's on stage. And look, that presidential debates are rarely they rarely make a substantial difference in the race, except this last one forced one of the candidates from the race. And I think that the Democratic enthusiasm since that June 27th debate has gone through the roof because they have a candidate who is younger than Joe Biden and who one would hope can be more articulate with her messaging. She just hasn't done it. She has engaged in packaged campaign conversations where she's reading off a teleprompter. So this will be an opportunity for America to see Donald Trump, who everybody in America knows what they're getting with him, versus Kamala Harris, who people who those of us in California, we know her well, but the rest of the United States will get a chance to see her au natural without the benefit of a scripted teleprompter event.
And Professor, how important is that we see her in this format in particular? Remember, I think back to the debates that she had in 2020 or 2019, really, in that large lead up when they had so many candidates. They had two nights of debates back in the day in the Democratic debate stage when they were trying to figure out that nominee. I remember the big line was the busing line against President Biden. She got a boost in the polls. And then after that, not so much as far as what we heard from her for the rest of that debate cycle. What can we expect from her tomorrow night?
Well, so first, yes, last time anybody has really seen her in this kind of context were those Democratic nominating debates back in 2019, which might as well have been from a different universe. They happened so long ago in political time that for most people, this is really going to be the first opportunity that they are going to see her in an unscripted format, having to deal with the chaos that is Donald Trump in a debate. So it's an opportunity for her to define herself in front of those people who have not really seen her, except in a campaign style event where she's delivering prepared remarks, and to also see how she's going to manage the chaos that is Donald Trump in one of these formats.
And then, Matt, to the point that the professor's making, something else that seemed like a lifetime ago was the vice presidential debate that she had with Mike Pence. And there she had, I think, the famous "I'm speaking" line that she had. But at the end of the day, that debate also, too, is more known for a fly on Mike Pence's hair than necessarily either performance from either candidate, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, the rules in this debate for Kamala Harris are not going to be conducive to that moment where, I'm speaking now, because the microphones are going to be turned off. And the funny part of this is that Donald Trump said that he would debate Joe Biden anytime, any place, anywhere. And Joe Biden's team agreed with a set of very prescriptive rules about what could and what couldn't be done. And then Kamala Harris came through and was giving Donald Trump a bunch of grief for, chickening out for debating her. He says, all right, let's do it. Same rules. And she says, well, I'd like to be seated. I'd like to have opening statements. I'd like to have notes, and I want live mics. And I mean, so she then wanted to change all the rules, and Donald Trump says, nope, we'll go with the same rules that we went to with Biden. And it may end up working to Donald Trump's benefit because he can't be Donald Trump and offer snide comments. And look, anytime you hear, and I've heard this from Kamala's people, that we're looking for that viral moment. Viral moments just happen. You don't go looking for them. So, and it tells you that they are fearful. If they're looking for a gotcha moment, they got to be worried about her ability to perform in this debate.
Do you see, Professor Smith, I guess, anything that would rile Trump's blood to get him to say something like that? Because even if he's, upset, he wants to jump into something. As we've talked about before, the mics are going to be cut.
So it really depends on former President Trump himself, what's going to happen here. If he can exercise self-restraint, if he can keep himself on topic and kind of connect the thoughts in a linear fashion, then there's not going to be that viral moment that a lot of people are kind of looking for from him. That said, frequently he goes off script. Frequently he can't help but respond. And so he can be baited into giving those kinds of responses that then people spend the next couple days talking about. I do think that the muting of the mics does help him in that respect, because not only will we not hear anything that he mutters under his breath, but any kind of response that Vice President Harris would make, we also won't hear that.
Well, I will say, and Professor, I think you soft pedaled it. You could come up with some. If Kamala Harris goes after Donald Trump and calls him a convicted felon and talks about putting felons like Donald Trump in jail when she was the Attorney General of California or a district attorney in San Francisco, if she goes out of her way to get under his skin and makes him do the worst of the Donald Trumps, one, that takes a lot of fortitude for a candidate to do that as you're staring another candidate in the face. It's one thing to do it on a stage with a bunch of people in the audience and you're reading off a teleprompter. This is live, person to person, with the man or the woman that you're making the statement against. If she does that and pulls it off, if Donald Trump exhibits self-restraint, that could be a viral moment. But if he loses it and calls her, engages in name calling or things of that, there are so many places where this thing could just go either really, really well or make for great TV. Look, there's a reason why TV covers car chases. So it could be really, really interesting.
Hey, we love covering car chases. There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, who doesn't love a good car chase? I agree.
Well, I think, and this is the interesting thing, is because we're gonna have definitely there's the potential for that discussion to happen. But at the end of the day, it's the issues too. But we may not even get to the issues depending on where this debate goes, or we're not going to get into them in depth as much as people would like. The people that I spoke to today for our story, they're interested in inflation. They're interested in high cost. That's been the number one issue that they were telling me about as we were talking to the folks in Bakersfield. That's got to be the number one issue for most people across the country. Obviously, there's some things here or there when it comes to a woman's right to choose, as Democrats will phrase it. And then you're also going to see too the foreign wars as well. Those will probably be the other two big topics, but really this is focused on the economy, you'd think, at this point.
A lot of it. So in the polling, if it's the public writ large, then yes, inflation, the economy, kind of the sense of malaise that exists about the economy right now is the number one issue. And then when you kind of disaggregate within subgroups, the economy is still really high. But once you start to disaggregate, then yeah, you start to see some significant differences in what people want to talk about and what people think the issues are. You didn't mention immigration right there, but immigration continues to be a significant issue. And it's one that Harris in particular has tried to stake out different ground from President Biden and be a little bit tougher and speak in a way that you would normally associate with kind of a Republican about the border and the need to control the border. And so there's going to be some back and forth there. But yeah, there's not been from the Harris side a lot of specifics, and we're just not going to get a lot of specifics in the debate tomorrow night.
I imagine too, we've had the conversation before about the retroactive borders are association with the title, as Professor Smith, as you brought up, immigration. I know that's got to be somewhere too, that if there's been any prep for the Trump team too, aside from the economy, it's going to be on that as far as going on the offensive, right, Matt?
Well, it's the second most popular issue in the United States right now. That largely because of what Governors Abbott and DeSantis did, immigration is now a national issue. And it is causing great pains for Democrats across the United States in cities that were sanctuary cities or states that were sanctuary states. They're now they're not only giving benefits to people who are in this country illegally that are not available to American citizens, but they're taking money from from programs geared toward kids and veterans and giving that to people who are here illegally. And then you add to that all of this stuff that's, we're going to see this come to a head soon about, people who are here illegally being able to register to vote or vote, and Democrats not supporting efforts to make sure that, they say, well, it's illegal. You can't prove that it happens. If you don't check, you don't know. And the Democrats are vulnerable on this issue. And I think that if Trump's smart, he can hammer this home. And look, if he doesn't hang the border around Kamala Harris's neck, it's a lost opportunity. 10 to 12 million people are in this country illegally because of the open border policies of Biden and Harris. Deaths from fentanyl, murders of American citizens by people from different countries. I mean, the border's a mess and everybody knows it. And if Kamala Harris is allowed to, to justify or blame this on the Republicans, it's a lost opportunity for Donald Trump.
Professor, do you think President Trump can explain that as well as Matt did, or no? Is he going to be able to be that coherently through that? Because I mean, that's the big question, right? I mean, are you going to be able to, number one, I think, which everyone's been trying to do on that side of the aisle, has been trying to make it the Biden-Harris administration, not just the Biden administration, right? That's the big thing.
Right. So, when you're dealing with a president who, with such low approval ratings that Biden has at this moment, then absolutely you want to tie as much as you possibly can for the next candidate, Vice President Harris, to the unpopular incumbent. And she has been involved in some of the policy debates, some of the policy discussions that Biden is unpopular for, right? Somewhat unfairly, I think the Biden White House gave her kind of the responsibility for understanding the border and figuring out what to do with the southern border. And not that she had any authority to do anything about it, but just to put a face in charge of it. And so I'm sure we'll hear about Border Czar and that title that, was unofficial, but people have tried to turn into an official title for her, right? So there is an opportunity for Trump to tie her to these policies, but she has thus far done a reasonable job of disassociating herself from Biden and talking about her own perspective and her own desires rather than things that President Biden has done. So, I mean, to your question, can Trump do it as eloquently? I mean, it depends on which Trump shows up tomorrow night. Right?
Exactly.
If it's the self-controlled Trump, then yeah, it's a clear opportunity for former President Trump. It's a clear vulnerability for Vice President Harris. If it's chaos Trump, then I don't think it's going to be possible. And I just don't know which one is going to show up.
As far as the issues for California are concerned too, I mean, that's a major one, especially in the Central Valley. And a lot of times when we think of Central Valley too, in addition to what we're thinking about as far as illegal immigration and what we're thinking too, as far as fentanyl coming over the border as well. I know a big issue in our local congressional districts is, of course, being able to get more people through legally working through visas to be farm workers and for labor here in the Central Valley. Who in congressional races in the Central Valley, particularly these tight districts for us in the South here in the Valadeo, Salas area, and then I guess up north too for Duarte and Gray, what are the things that voters are looking at from that debate? Is there anything that they can take away from that tomorrow night into the congressional votes once that starts to get cast too? When you're filling out those ballots, you're going to see a lot of mixed tickets as well. You're going to see the Harris Duarte voters. You're going to see the Valadeo Harris voters as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked at any data about ticket splitters. I have a feeling though that what's behind your name in a lot of these races is going to be as important as your name itself. Meaning that Mr. Valadeo and Duarte are going to be they're going to be ours, right? And Salas is going to be a D. And I think that people are going to be looking at how both Harris and Trump perform, and that will help or hurt them. I mean, there's a reason why the Democrats so desperately needed Joe Biden off the ballot, because he was just, it dampened that enthusiasm. And, we've been talking a lot about which Donald Trump shows up, but I think we haven't done enough talking about which Kamala Harris are we going to see. If it's the giggly, vapid, policy void, vice president that we saw for the last 3 years, or the Kamala Harris that we've seen for the last 2 months, those are two completely different candidates and people. And there's no guarantee that, commanding Kamala is going to show up. If she's nervous or she feels pressure by Donald Trump, don't forget, she's never met Donald Trump before. So I think that both candidates are walking the tightrope here, which is why debates are so awesome, is that the American people needs to see two candidates on the same stage. Because if they can't do it here, I'd rather have them fail here than fail talking to Xi Jinping in China or Vladimir Putin of Russia, where the stakes really matter. So, I think this is going to be so much fun tomorrow night to see how this goes.
And Professor Smith, where on the curriculum does it say debates are awesome? Is that
well? So usually we say debates are not awesome. Usually we say debates don't play much of a role in determining the outcome. This is the year where we have to start saying again that debates play a role in the process. And it really is. The first debate fundamentally changed the contest because it convinced so many Democrats that Biden could not be a successful candidate this year, and that they needed to figure out a way to get him off the ticket and get somebody else in. And then this late in the game, as we started with at the beginning of the conversation, that for many people, this is going to be the first time that they really sit down and look at Kamala Harris and listen to Kamala Harris speak outside of a prepared set of remarks. And so it will be people's first opportunity to see how she sounds, how she thinks, how she's going to respond, what kind of presence she's going to have, and whether or not they like that. And so, this is the year where we have to really say that debates can be determinative in what happens in this election cycle.
And the last question, just to tie it back to that question on the economy, something interesting happened when I was interviewing one of our people today that we were just pulling off the street and asking folks what their thoughts are. When the conversation, the economy was brought up, obviously the energy bills, the cost of gas, that stuff gets brought up too. But one thing that this woman told me today, she said, she talked about the stimulus check that she received from Trump during COVID, and just wondering why that's not there now at a time where folks need it the most. And obviously we can get into the economic reasons as to why that's not happening. But at the same time, too, if that's what voters are seeing, they're going to have that positive association with his administration versus maybe what they're seeing right now, that they're not getting the same relief that they had when he was in office. So that's the question, is kind of how does Kamala Harris kind of form her economic positions that are, I would imagine, have to be somewhat separated and different from Bidenomics.
Well, look, government transfer payments are a hallmark of any Democrat. Look at Joe Biden, who has tried, he's failed twice, but he's tried twice to cancel student debt. Government transfer payments are a mainstay of Democratic Party politics. And, it becomes problematic when you have a government that is in hock up to their, over their neck. We're running structural budget deficits every single year, and the flip of that is Democrats rely on government transfer payments. Republicans rely on tax cuts. And, whether you want to argue that one is better than the other, it just depends on where you sit is where you stand here. But we're at the point at this time where, look at California. We are a very generous society, to the point of where the legislature contemplated giving loans to people in this country who illegally that would likely be forgiven by government. Thankfully, Gavin Newsom boycotted that, but he didn't boycott it because it was the wrong thing to do. He boycotted because he didn't want to give the Republicans an election issue. So, look, there is going to be a lot of shenanigans that go on between now and November 5th. And don't forget, this has been one of the craziest elections I think I've ever been a part of. We haven't even hit the October surprise yet.
Well, that's because all the early voting takes place before October now. So
We'll start voting.
exactly, people
Voting.
already putting it in. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if we were out in front of the Professor Smith. Any last words on it?
Oh no, I did. To your question about voters associating Trump's name with those checks, right? I mean, that's one of the things that he's very good at, is making sure people know what he did and putting his name on everything. And for Democrats that, since they want to do so much, there's never one big thing that they're going to put their name on. So there's never one big thing. Bidenomics is not one thing. Bidenomics is a whole bunch of separate programs that get lumped together under kind of that broad rubric. And so there may be lots of little ways that people have benefited from the policies that Biden has passed, but there's not one kind of major thing that they can point to and say, this is the impact that Biden has had on me. And so that's a disadvantage that he's had there, and that Harris is going to inherit.
All right. Well, we'll be looking forward to that debate tomorrow night. Of course, we'll have coverage on it tomorrow night, as well as we'll recap in our 10 o'clock broadcast, 5 and 6 o'clock. No broadcast there, as you can imagine why. We have a debate tomorrow night, so we'll be looking forward to that. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us, and we'll look forward to speaking with you after, getting your thoughts on that.
Thanks, Will.